Yesterday, several parties took to rallies across the country to make their final plea for votes. The African National Congress held its Siyanqoba rally at the FNB Stadium, while the Economic Freedom Fighters held their final Tshela Thupa rally at the Peter Mokaba Stadium in Polokwane. And the Umkhonto weSizwe party took their Mayibuye rally in Hammarsdale in KwaZulu-Natal. So who are these rallies targeting at the last stretch? Let's talk to political commentator and lecturer at the Free State Central University of Technology, Leeto Nthoba. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Master Chaba, and good morning to your viewers.
So, Leeto, voters have already registered, and one would think that people are positioned. They know exactly who they want to vote for. How effective are these last-minute rallies, and who exactly do you think they're targeting?
So these last-minute rallies, I think, are more talking to the home base of each party, right? I think only the EFF has sort of put itself in another place other than the convention of the other parties, as is their way. So if you look at the ANC's Siyanqoba rally, for instance, they're always there to reassure the base of the party, not just the people who are loyal to the party, but also the deployed cadres to the party, to say to them, we have done all we can. This is our final stretch. It's time to hunker down and look at the numbers, go to the IEC election center. And so it's their final push to the membership to say, we are confident, this is where we're going, and expect the best for the party. And then you look at the EFF, right? And this has been the interesting part of the weekend for me, because they go to Limpopo, which should be the strongest part for the EFF, especially because Troy Chivambu and Julius Malema come from the province. And you always see that Limpopo is always with the EFF in spirit, but never at the ballot box, right? And that's also the situation with the demographic the EFF tries to cater to these young, disenfranchised Black youths. And so those two are very aspirational goals for the EFF. And so them going to Limpopo and trying their best to get those who are with them in spirit to be with them in the ballot box is exactly the test that they're going to have to traverse when it comes to the ballot box next week. And so I think that's where they were going. But you see the other parties going to their strongholds and hunkering down, the IFP in KZN, in places where they know they are very strong. And so trying to get the people who've always stuck with them to be there next week for them. And I think these are going to be pivotal, because what they're trying to fight against is the apathy of the voter who's always been there, and not trying to contest for the undecided voter today. The undecided voter for any party today is the basic lotto play, right? Is the 5 rand for the 5 million rand. And so they're then leaving those voters alone, except, and in partly, I think lastly, for the DA, who are going to Benoni, which is an Afrikaans sort of enclave, but not an intrinsically Afrikaans enclave. It's an Afrikaans enclave of transplants. Most people who move from the Free State, Northwest, Northern Cape, probably move into Johannesburg and into Benoni, Alberton, those parts. And so they're trying to apply to that base that they think that the Freedom Front Plus has forgotten, and they might capitalize on that vote. And so those, I think, are the dynamics that the major three are trying to go for this weekend.
I see. And now with more parties even pushing more today with their last-minute rallies, what efforts do you think these political parties should be making to try and sway that undecided voter to support their political party?
So, yeah, you're also seeing that, like with parties like Action SA, right? Soweto was pivotal for Action SA in the last local elections. They really pushed them towards getting into the Johannesburg municipalities. And so I think they're trying to get into that stronghold and understand that stronghold. I think Action SA has not appealed to that stronghold throughout this election campaign period. And I think they're trying to get back to them and say, we haven't forgotten about you. It's not that we are trying to coax everybody in, but we're trying to also put you in our good graces as well. And so I think for the most part, I'm more worried about the smaller parties, which haven't seen the one that lack the big machinery of the ANC that can go door to door, that lack the charisma of a Julius Malema as a leader, that lack the DAs, even if trying to get this monolithic base that the DA and the Freedom Fight Plus are fighting for. So the smaller parties, for me, I think, are in a lot of danger, are in more danger than we thought. Because if you think about small parties that are already in the parliament, right? The ACDPs of the world, the UDMs of the world, the ATMs of the world. Even though ATM and UDM are tree shakers in the parliament, it hasn't translated in them being meaningful on the campaign trail. And so I'm looking at them and seeing what their fortunes would look like, because parties like the ATM and UDM are actually fighting for a stronghold in places in the Eastern Cape. And so they haven't actually translated to their bases what they actually did in parliament. And so I'm worried about them more than I am about the bigger parties who are trying to find their bases and re-energize those bases. And I think that is the dynamic we're also going to have to look at next week going forward after the election.
And during the campaign trails, we've seen quite a number of own goals from some political parties, with one of the most recent having been the DA's advert with the burning of the flag, or as they would say in defense, it's a digital burning of a flag and not the actual flag. But nonetheless, now as we were having a conversation with my colleague, Mr. Khumalo, who's on the ground there and interviewing one of their representatives in Benoni to just try and find out whether that advert had any impact negatively on their potential voters. And they say, no, not according to our surveys. I mean, he went on to say that they've not seen a decline in voter confidence following that ad. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, if I'm going to vote for a party, right, if I'm going to vote for the ANC, let's say, I don't mind that there's a pothole in the road, because I believe they're going to fix the pothole. So if I'm going to vote for the DA, I don't mind them burning flags and fear-mongering some Swart Gevaar line, because I believe that they're going to advance South Africa. But I think the DA don't realize that the undecided voter in this election is going to be the change that we need, because we're talking about an election of a changeover and not necessarily you applying to your base. And I think that's the tonality that they miss. They miss the fact that the undecided voter, but also the disillusioned voter, is who you're trying to win over. And if the disillusioned voter is very patriotic, loves that flag, and assumes that that flag is a sign of freedom, then you've alienated them, but you've kept your base. If you keep your base and don't win more votes, then how do you expect to win an election? And I think there has been some tone deafness when it comes to the DA. We've also seen the Patriotic Alliance, who wanted to appeal to the colored vote, but been tone deaf to the colored Muslim vote when they speak about Palestine and Israel. And so when you look at those kind of dynamics, it's always going to be a misstep for parties that don't understand what the bases are like, that South Africa doesn't have homogenous groups. It has groups that are diverse. Even if we are colored, we are diverse in our coloredness. Even if we are black, we're diverse in our blackness. And if you don't appeal to that diversity, it might be very, very treacherous ground that you're treading.
Yeah, and while I still have you, Leeto, I'd like to know from you, what do you think are the potential risks and opportunities of this election, and how might they impact on our progress and stability as a country?
Well, I think the big sort of hope point for this election is that we do see some kind of change, one that brings this dream coalition government that we're talking about. But the biggest risk to South Africa in this election is going to also be the coalition in and of itself that we are all wishing for. Because we've seen the backbiting nature of these parties, especially in coalition, especially the parties that are trying to appeal to the same base of people. So you see how the DA backbites Action SA, the PA, and people that you would think they'll get along with because they're trying to jostle for the same voter bases. And that is going to be a potential pitfall. But I think the upside is going to be an upside for the politicking inside South Africa in general, right? Because
Excuse me?
It's always been sort of this amateurish show of this race so trying to get homogenous groups. We're trying to get black people or white people or women or men. And so now I think it's an advancement of our politics to then show that some of the problems that we suffer from, don't choose your color, don't choose some kind of homogenous group that we suppose that you're in. And that maturing of our electoral system is going to then force the parties to either die or mature with the system. And I think that's what's going to be the biggest win. We're going to see parties die off who can't evolve with the system. And then we're going to start to see parties sort of merge together in order to try and appeal to the new kind of voter and a new kind of thinking inside the South African voter. So there's a lot of hope and a little bit of trepidation for what might go wrong. But I think the hope is more on the upside for South Africa.